Conrad, great to see you. A lot has happened since we last spoke in February, but before talking about the big elephant in the room, tariffs, as always, I would like to start with a brief look back into the first quarter. So how was Clariant's start into the year 2025?
Yes, good morning, Kai. A lot has happened indeed, but we have been very pleased with how the first quarter came out. First of all, our top line revenue up 1% in local currency. We were very pleased with that result in the current market conditions. Secondly, our profitability. We were able to increase our EBITDA margins from 18.1% last year to 18.8% this year. That also in the current environment is something we were very pleased with.
Definitely. And you mentioned market conditions that requires typically a lot of firefighting and short-term decision-making. However, strategy execution is also relevant. What can you say about our big strategic initiatives?
Yeah, if you look at our strategic initiatives, I'd like to mention two. First of all, Lucas Meyer. The integration of Lucas Meyer is going very well. We see continued strong revenue growth. We also see continued strong profitability for this business. And both of these are very much driven by innovation. And because of that, we were very pleased with the recognition that this business got at the big In Cosmetics show in Amsterdam, which is a prestigious international event for cosmetics ingredients players, where Lucas Meyer got recognized with 6 innovation awards. That's a very high number, and it never happened before. Secondly, on strategic initiatives, our cost performance improvement programs. We were very pleased that we brought in the full 175 million Swiss francs savings from the program that we previously had announced. And we started now working on the new program that we talked about in London at our Investor Day in November, 80 million annual savings in Swiss francs. And we're seeing some initial results from that program already.
That's good to know. So we will come back to that when we talk about the margin. However, let's stick to top line for a moment, because you said overall growth. However, each business is a little different. Can you maybe talk about our 3 business units and how they did in terms of sales development?
Yeah, sure, Kai. Indeed, a different performance by business unit. Let me start with Care Chemicals, up 6% in local currency. Very much helped also by Lucas Meyer, that brought in an additional 25 million Swiss francs in the quarter, but also quite some good growth in other segments. I'd like to call out specifically Crop Solutions with double-digit growth versus prior year, where we see a solid performance, and actually, some of that also versus a much lower base last year when we still had some destocking. For Care Chemicals, also strong volumes actually in the US for de-icing. It was a good de-icing season in North America in terms of volumes. If you look at additives and adsorbents, overall plus 2% local currency growth. Here, a combination where our additive business was actually showing very strong results with double-digit growth in the first quarter, particularly in our electronics business with our flame retardants, but also for Lycosene when you look at outlets like furniture. So offsetting some weakness in the adsorbents business, which suffered in some regions, particularly in Europe from lower automotive build rates, which had a negative effect on our foundry business. Finally, Catalyst came in line with expectations, minus 13% in revenue, but that very much reflected the lower new build rates as well as the prolonged refill cycle in this business that we talked about. And this was after a strong Q4 that we had just finished.
So overall growth is back. So that's good news. Plus you mentioned the cost programs already. So bringing both together, that should improve profitability. So what can you tell us about EBITDA in the first quarter?
Yeah, as mentioned, Kai, EBITDA margins up from 18.1 to 18.8%. And indeed, as you say, this is a combination, first and foremost, of growth. We're happy that overall our business is back to growth. Secondly, margin management. It continues to be a very high priority for us, and we were very pleased that overall we saw between the three businesses our pricing up by 1%. We saw margin improvements in each one of our businesses. And finally, cost remains a priority in a slow growth environment. And therefore, we were very happy with the performance here, where we concluded successfully our first significant cost out program, the 175 million Swiss franc that I talked about.
Yeah, thank you, Conrad, for talking about all these Q1 results. Can you let us know what this means for our guidance for the full year 2025?
Yeah, if you look at our guidance for 25, we confirm our guidance that we communicated at the end of February, where we signaled a growth range of 3 to 5% local currency growth, where we expected to finish more or less at the bottom end of that range, also considering some of the recent turmoil around tariffs specifically. We also said 17 to 18% EBITDA margins before exceptional items. And given the modest growth, the improvement in our margins that we're seeing, as well as continued cost discipline, we feel in a good position to also deliver that 17 to 18% EBITDA margin before exceptional items.
Let me still understand a little bit better how this works, the risk mitigation around tariffs. So there's a direct and an indirect impact. You mentioned the indirect impact on demand. However, how are we positioned in looking at these tariffs and how they could impact our business?
Yeah, if you look at the direct impact of tariffs, we feel this is manageable for Clariant. We do have a global footprint with 68 factories around the world. So we typically produce in a region for a region. And if that is not the case, if we're importing materials, typically these are real specialty chemicals where we add a unique value, we provide a unique value to our customers. We obviously don't like to pass on increases to our customers. We will try to rearrange, where possible, our own supply chains. But if and when that is not possible, we will have to pass on these tariffs to our customers, and we feel in a good position to do so. As far as indirect impacts, yes, tariffs not being good for business, driving up inflation, slowing down economic growth. You saw the most recent outlook by the IMF lowering their global growth forecast. We also look at some data here from Oxford Economics that are now projecting negative industrial production in both Europe as well as in the US. So this has a negative impact, but this was highlighted already earlier in the year by us. So the 3 to 5% growth, us finishing at the bottom end of that range, that's pretty much baked in here, the lower outlooks for growth.
Yeah, thank you, Conrad, for sharing your view on this. Please allow me one final question. This morning, we also announced that our CFO, Bill Collins, will step down from his role and go into retirement. Yeah, some people were caught by surprise. You were probably not caught by surprise. However, maybe you can say a few words about your view on Bill's decision.
Yeah, Bill's decision to retire, he had signaled that already a while ago, so it wasn't a surprise here. This is a planned transition. We are very pleased to welcome Oliver Ritken, who joins us from Bayer, where he served the last 25 years in senior leadership roles, most recently as the CFO for their crop science division. So a warm welcome to Oliver. There is a smooth transition planned in the coming months. And I also like to take this opportunity to thank Bill for his enormous contributions in the recent 3 years to Clariant, and I wish Bill well in his next chapter in his life.
So do we all. Thank you, Conrad, for your time. All the best for you and Clariant for the next quarter, and we will then talk again soon.
Thank you, Kai.